Welcome to the Lady Landlords podcast, where we empower women to gain financial independence through real estate investing. I'm your host, Becky Nova, founder of Lady Landlords. If you're ready to buy, manage, and grow your real estate portfolio, then let's get started.
Last week on the Lady Landlords podcast, you listened to the worst deal that I ever had in my real estate investing journey. So today, I'm going to tell you about the best investment I ever made. And I didn't need a trust fund to buy it. I didn't have to find some person that would sell me their house at this ridiculous, amazing price. It was a simple deal that pays me month after month after month, year after year after year. The other thing that I will tell you about this house is, in my opinion, it is the ugliest house that I own out of my entire portfolio. Okay. So this might not be my favorite property, but it is the hands down the best cash flowing property. So today, here is the story of a property that changed my confidence level, that helped get my husband on board with buying more real estate, and also gave us a bigger raise in income than we ever received from any corporate job we ever had. All right. So let's hop into this story here. So if you have not listened to the episode about the worst deal I ever had and you're interested in what happened there, feel free to go back, take a listen. That was actually last week's episode that I shared with you. But today we're going to be on more on the positive side, and I'm going to share my story about the best purchase, the best deal I ever got. Now, the worst deal that I shared was back in 2021. The deal that I'm going to share here is about 2022. Now, in 2022, I wanted to buy a property throughout that year. But by this point in time, we already probably had, I think, like 10, 12 units. We already owned both here in the United States, and we owned some rentals down in the Dominican Republic. We had a lot of tenant management going on in this period of time. We had a lot of things going on with their business. We were past the casual, let's buy real estate kind of phase. Once we hit 2020 and my husband had lost his job during the pandemic, that was really when we decided to start buying properties intentionally and start growing in a different way than, woohoo, this is cool, it's worth a couple extra $100, to, hey, this could change our lives. This could give us the ability to leave our day jobs if something happened or if we so chose to. So we got a lot more picky about this. But in 2022, with so many other things going on with our rental properties, and we were still working full-time day jobs at this point in time, I have to say I probably wasn't as diligent about finding a property. I remember like early in that year in 2022, just kind of like casually kind of like floating through. I felt like I kept hearing all these stories about like, well, sale prices are so high now, and interest rates are crazy. So everybody's out there buying, and people were waiving inspections and passing up all these other contingencies just to be able to get this place, and competition was crazy. So I remember looking on the MLS, but I wasn't really doing a deal analysis. I was just sitting there, just kind of casually scrolling on through, clicking on some things. Every once in a while, maybe we would go out and see a property, but like I really just wasn't taking it serious. But by the time I got about halfway through the year, I was now in this place, and I'll never forget this feeling. I was in this place where I was like, wow, why don't I have another property? And then like literally it was like the little devil on my shoulder was just kind of like, well, Becky, you haven't done anything to actually earn a new property. Kind of like, how dare me expect that this property was just going to kind of fall from the sky when I wasn't actually putting in any work or any effort or energy into actually making it happen. So I changed things. It was, I think, a Thursday night. And at this time, my husband actually was working evenings. My husband was a bartender in New York City for many years. So he was at work. I'm at home. I had this realization that if I actually want to buy something, I actually needed to do work to make that happen. So I sat down on my computer. It was probably like 8 o'clock at night too, which by the way is like my bedtime. So this was really late for me. But I sat down, and there was nothing on the MLS at the time that was appealing to me. So I actually went back to properties that my realtor had previously sent to me and I looked to see what was still available. So I was able to go through the portal that a lot of realtors give you for MLS listings. And I went back and I kind of filtered it. And I said, okay, well, what were the listings that were sent to me in the past few months? I took out all the ones that were already pending, under contract, what sold. And then I went back through all of the ones that were still available. I weeded things out again. I was in a place where, once again, I just told you I had a bunch of things going on with tenant management, and a bunch of other rehab projects I was doing. So I didn't want to buy something that was going to be another project. I was really looking for a turnkey property, not a lot of work in it. I was very happy to buy something that already had tenants in place. So I then went back through the list and my list kept getting shorter. There were 100 homes at first. Then when I took out the things that had closed, I'm now down to 50. And then I took out things that were rehab, I'm now down to 40. So I kept weeding through these. Once I removed those and all the rehabs or things that needed to be cash buyers only because they were just in such disrepair, I took all those out, right? Now I was left with probably like 25 different listings. And I started going through and I started running numbers on them. I usually do a two-pronged approach. I do a very quick glance deal analysis to see if a property is even going to make sense for me to look at. And then the second thing that I do is my full deep analysis, right? So I went through, once again, it was probably about 25, 30 properties. I went through that and did my first glance process, okay? I probably got down and cut about 50% of those properties out as things that were not even worth my time looking at because the numbers weren't going to work. And then I had 10, 15 properties left. And that's what I now did my deal analysis on. I did my deal analysis. I dove into those properties and I came up with probably about 7 or 8 of them that were just reasonable for me to really look at. And I called my realtor. It was probably like 10:30 at night with these, hey, I want to go look at these properties. And he actually answered my call. And now we've done a lot of business together. So when he sees my name pop up, I'm sure that was something he's like, I got to figure out what she wants. So he answered my call. He was able to get in touch with some of the realtors, even at that time of night, to be able to set up showings for me the very next morning. Now, the reason that was important for the very next morning was because 2 of the properties had best and finals that needed to be in. One of them had to be in by noon the next day, and the other had to be in by the end of the business day. The other 2, fine, were still open and available. And then that would make 4. The other 3, 4 properties I had them look into, they either had one under contract or they were coming off the market. Whatever it was, those 4 weren't going to work or we weren't able to see them, whatever it may be. But my realtor at that late at night was able to set up 4 showings for me the very next morning. And we are all ready to go. The kicker to this is that my husband still has no idea that we are going to look at these properties. He is still working. He has no idea what his wife did or what his realtor did at all that evening. So my husband, once again, New York City bartender here, probably got home at like 2 o'clock in the morning. And I woke that poor man up at like 7 o'clock and said, hey, we got to go look at properties. The properties we were looking at this period in time were quite a bit away from us, a little over an hour to go look in the certain area that we wanted to buy. And we now had showings that were scheduled because we had to figure out if we were getting this offer in. And I will never forget my husband's face in the morning while he was like, you are waking me up for what? It's one of my favorite videos that pops up on my Instagram every single year now. If you don't follow me on Instagram, go check me out on the Becky Nova. That's where I post a lot of like the behind the scenes. But I have a video that I recorded of like my husband giving me like a total stink eye the entire drive up for this hour because I woke him up so early. He was happy that we were going to be looking at new properties, but he was not happy to be doing that on 5 hours of sleep. So we drove up and we get to go look at these properties. Now we had a full itinerary, right? We had properties that we needed to see and it was really like into one, into the other. And we really had a full day packed to be able to go look at these properties. The first property we looked at was a 4-family. It was completely renovated, but it was also vacant. There were other people already walking through this property, and it was a good spot. It was in a very up-and-coming area, short walk to the downtown area, great for Metro North, which is huge in New York State for commuters to be able to get into New York City. It was just a great location. There were a couple things that I will say that the people that flipped the property that I was like, maybe not exactly the best quality work, but I was really able to work with it. I really liked it. So when we actually left, that was the property that we had to get the bid in before, I think it was a noon deadline. So I remember between property number 1 on our way to property number 2, we decided we were going to make an offer. And I actually rode in my realtor's car and used his hotspot and his laptop to be able to get my offer in, because we had to be able to get to that second property for a showings window, since the property actually had tenants in place and we only had a certain period of time that we were able to see it. So we didn't have time to really stop and have breakfast and talk about this deal. We already knew our numbers yesterday. We already knew what property we were going to go in for. So that at least made it easy. But we actually had to make the offer in the car driving between different showings. So that was property 1. We now had to offer in on that. So I was like, this is amazing. Like, look, I looked yesterday and the universe is now rewarding me with a property that actually worked. And that property, those numbers were good. Those numbers were good on that property. That would have been 4 units, about $500 profit per door. We're looking at about $2,000 once that was rented out. My biggest concern was really that vacancy, but knowing that area probably would not have taken very long. And once again, the entire property was just rehabbed. So really easy to be able to start renting that out on day 1. So we showed up at property 2. Property 2 was actually my favorite property that I saw on the MLS. It was a 2-family property. It had a main unit and then it had a 3-bedroom downstairs and the downstairs was actually rented by 3 elderly sisters. It also had a big pool in the backyard. I gotta be honest, this was a property that I was considering moving into, and that would have been possibly a place that my husband and I would have chose to live. And really, I just kind of wanted the pool. But it was a great location. It was actually right down the street from another property that I owned up in the Hudson Valley, literally walking distance. I would have loved that. When I got to the property, though, the first thing that went through my mind was, that photographer was really good. The property did not live up to the pictures at all. It was something that all of a sudden my dream of like, oh my God, what a gorgeous house to be able to move into, went right down the tubes. There was no way for it. But once again, I did my deal analysis before seeing these properties. I knew I could make it work as a rental, so that didn't deter me. We ended up speaking with the 3 elderly sisters that lived in the downstairs unit, and they were very concerned. They were on fixed income. They were very concerned about having to move. They didn't drive, so this was very convenient that they were able to walk to places that they needed to be able to get to. They were really worried. We assured them at that time that if we did get the accepted offer, that we would be keeping them. That really helps us, and we've done that in a couple different properties before, because sometimes the tenants can get a little bit of the seller's ear. So we had a feeling that the elderly women were able to kind of say like, hey, that one couple that were investors, well, they're looking to keep us. We would really like them to be the ones to buy this property. So we saw that property, even though I was disappointed with it from a perspective of us possibly moving into it. It was actually something we really liked. And now, since we knew that the numbers worked, we actually made offer number 2 of the day. I am 2 for 2 at this point and could not be more excited. The third property that we went to go see was a mess. It was in a great location. It was right on Main Street, across the street from the local church, the firehouse, and also an elementary school. So we looked at that and said, how perfect would that be for somebody that was looking to be nice and close to the school? You had the playground right there. We had the church right across the street. It was just a really great location. We were a little disappointed because on the bottom floor, there were tenants still there, but the tenants that were upstairs, well, when they found out that the seller was going to sell, they actually moved out. So even though we thought we would be getting a fully vacated property on this one, we found out that the upstairs tenant, after years of living there, had moved out. Okay, we looked at it, not a ton of work to do, but really not what we were looking to do now. And then the couple that had been downstairs had been renting there for 29 years. Can you believe that? 29 years. They had seen 3 different owners of that property during the time that they were there. They had their kids there. They raised their kids there. Their kids moved out. Their kids were married and had their own kids at this point in time. But that elderly couple was still there. We noticed at that point in time, too, that the previous landlord had done nothing while they owned that property. Nothing had been updated. Nothing had been fixed. The rent for this unit where this couple lived there for 29 years was incredibly low. And then also you could tell, once again, there was so much work that was going to be needed when these people moved out. It really wasn't something that we felt was going to be a fit for us because it just didn't check the boxes of what we were looking for. So we went on to the fourth property. The fourth property just was not a fit for us. It was a weird layout, a weird shape. The location was kind of off. It needed a lot more work than we thought it was going to. And the biggest problem was really the layout. We had properties in right outside the city that are called railroad style. A railroad apartment is where you have to walk through one bedroom to get to the next bedroom. So they're connected. So imagine you get up in the middle of the night and you have to walk through your friend's bedroom to be able to get to the bathroom, right? Can be really kind of uncomfortable. Very, very typical for an apartment style, especially in New York City. But once again, this is Hudson Valley here. It looked more like a rooming house, but a rooming house where everybody would have to be really comfortable with people walking through their bedrooms in the middle of the night. This did not really seem like a very good idea here. So we said, you know what? This is really not going to be a fit for us. But, okay, we got 2 offers in. We felt good about it. Even though I was not a fan of that third property, my husband speaks up now. And he said, you know what? Let's throw in a lowball offer. Now, usually wasn't our style. The reason for that is because most of the properties we bought were either at ask or actually above asking price. We're buying in competitive areas in high cost of living in New York. And it was important that in order for us to get accepted offers, we put in bids that were appropriate. Now, we always checked our numbers. We always made sure that we were getting the return that we were looking for, that we were making the profit that we were looking for. So I was okay going over ask, but my husband just always struggled with that concept. To me, who cares if we're still making X amount of profit? If we're making $500 profit a month per unit, okay, I'm okay with however it shakes out if we have to pay a little bit more than the asking price is, because you know what? We're still bringing home the number that we want. I don't care what the taxes are if I'm bringing home the number that I want, right? So really wasn't our style. We'd actually never gotten really a property for under ask, I don't think, up until that point, if I remember correctly. So my husband was so excited about this. So you know what? The poor guy, I woke him up in the middle of the morning here for him. So I said, you know what? Let's go for it. Sure. So I don't even think that I was a part too much of what that number was going in for that offer, because I didn't think we were going to get it, and I didn't really kind of care too much. I was really excited about the other 2 properties. So moral of the story right here is we made something happen. Okay. Instead of sitting there and saying, there's no deals out there, there's no deals out there, there's no deals out there, I went through and found us deals. I figured out what opportunities were still out there and how to make them work. Hey, if we get this for a different sale price, hey, if we're able to change what the rents are in this, hey, if we're able to negotiate for the seller to pick up certain closing costs or to buy down points for us, what would make something work to turn a dud into a deal? That to me was the most important in that space. And we found properties and we were able to make offers on 75% of them. That's pretty impressive in my opinion. So we now go through, we made our 3 offers, and I get calls back later that afternoon. That first property we saw, that 4-family that was flipped, went way over ask. Somebody else bought it. Fine, not for me. I'll go over ask, but I am not chasing numbers. I'll put in an offer that makes sense financially with what the property is worth and what I'm looking for from a profit perspective. That's what I'll do. Somebody wanted to overpay what that number was. That is fine. That does not fit my buying criteria. That one is not for me. The second property, oh, we got that accepted offer. The pool with the elderly ladies there, that property, now we have an accepted offer. We are calling our real estate attorney to get under contract. And then I got a surprising call that we got the offer on the third property as well. The seller accepted our lowball offer. I feel like I had to go back to my computer and pull up my numbers because I was like, I don't even know what we put in our offer for because I just didn't even think about that property as a contender. So I'm now excited. We now have 2 properties. We weren't planning on buying 2 properties. So now I'm sitting there thinking, cool, what can I do to have the down payments for 2? That wasn't something I was focused on. Do we say no to one of them? And if so, which property am I going to say no to? In New York State, accepted offers are not legally binding. So I was able to say, thank you very much for the accepted offer, but I'm not going to take it. Can't do that in every state, but in New York State, I can do that. Until you're under contract officially, It is not a legally binding accepted offer. So we were debating this, if this was going to work, if I can swing and find a way to pick up both of them, or which one was I going to let go of? Which one made sense to lose? Because to be honest, that one with the elderly couple that lived there for 29 years in the empty unit, those numbers were amazing, but the property was ugly. And now I had a vacancy, and now I had a unit that had not been touched in 29 years. And I had rents with this elderly couple that were just so low. Well, the universe decided for me. I got a call the next day that the seller from the duplex with the 3 elderly ladies in the pool, they actually decided to take the property off the market. The guy didn't want to move. He wanted to enjoy his pool during summer, and he just wasn't sure if he was going to sell anymore. So my husband's all excited because we are now definitely moving forward with the ugly house that he got for under the asking price. So now what am I going to do with this property? Now I have a vacancy. Now I have expenses because I do have to renovate some of that unit in order to get that up and running. And I have to figure out what to do with this couple that has lived there for 29 years and are way under market rent. So my numbers actually still worked because the number of what I was going to be able to rent out that top unit with the new tenant would be able to really kind of cover that mortgage. And then what the people were paying downstairs, little extra bonus there. That was kind of my profit. So the numbers were still going to work on this property, but I was really going to be looking at about $500 or $700 for both units. Once again, I usually want $500 per unit. I was looking at like $250, $350 profit. So I am quite a bit below where I want it to be. So at the time, I learned about something called the binder method. Now, the binder method, I have previous episodes on the Lady Landlords podcast all about how the binder method works, and I'll link that down in the show notes, but just to briefly explain it, it's really the idea of having a conversation with a tenant when their lease is coming up for renewal. Okay, you can't change this in the middle of the lease, but really explaining to the tenant, like, hey, here are the comps. Here is what this would cost you if you move to another apartment in this area. These are kind of the prices. So based on those comps, where do you feel that the rent should be priced on this? And with this strategy, which is from Dion McNeely, because I will not take credit for his idea here, but Dion, and I interview him all about this on the podcast here, had run this test with tenants, and over the years the tenants actually had an increase of 37% on average in what their rents were. So we said, you know what, this is a great opportunity to try this binder method and to really negotiate with the tenant and come up with a number that's fair. We recognized that the unit was old, that it was outdated, but the tenants wanted to stay. And when we had a conversation with them, they were okay with things that were outdated because they were also on a fixed income. So we were able to agree to an increase that would let them stay, that they were still comfortable with that price, but then did not cost us a huge amount of money to really make repairs and get that property completely upgraded. We will upgrade that when they move out, but until that period of time, we were able to agree to a price point for an outdated apartment, but still allowed them to be able to live comfortably on their fixed income. So we were actually in good space there. We were excited to be able to close on that property and to pick up that new duplex. But what really was the kicker there were those 2 items. The unit that was vacant, we simply had to get somebody in to put new carpet in, really not a big issue at all. And also we ended up painting that unit. I don't think we needed to replace appliances. We were able to have everything really done within a weekend, nice and simple. And then thanks to the binder method, we were able to get rents up to a place where we were making a profit of $1,750 a month. $1,750 a month on a duplex profit every single month. That was a huge difference for us. And this, once again, this time came right after my husband and I started intentionally buying profits, intentionally started buying properties. So we were looking for that cash flow. This was something that I saw as a great opportunity for my husband and I to be in a financially free place. And I just remember looking at that increase and what that profit was going to be coming in every single month from this ugly, ugly house. And all I remember thinking was, I've worked in a career for 15 years. I worked in cancer research. That's a good living. I made good money. I made a 6-figure income. It was a well-established job. And yet, every year my raise, that was not $1,750 a month. I had to create that myself. And I was able to, thanks to real estate investing. And that property still to this day, we've increased rents over time. That property still to this day has actually been our best performing unit. What was interesting, and the reason we actually got it under the asking price, is the seller was actually a absentee landlord. Once again, there was no updates in this property in years, but they were an out-of-state landlord. They actually got transferred by their company. They were getting transferred to England, and they decided, I don't want to have to manage this property across the ocean here. So let me just go ahead and sell it. Great opportunity to really capitalize on those increased prices after the pandemic. So I'm sure the seller still made out well, but they had a buyer already lined up. The seller was now moving, and then that deal fell through. And those buyers were not able to close, and the seller had to put the property back on the market. But now they were right up against their move time, and they really needed to unload that property. And that is why we were able to negotiate for that lower sale price, because he just needed to get rid of that property. Once again, probably still made out well from what he had paid for that property just a few years before, did no work to it, had no tenants to have to find, and then was able just to cash out and be able to profit off of that equity. But for us, we were able to buy at a low sale price with now great rents, thanks to the binder method. And all we had to do was just swap out some carpet. Love that property. Unfortunately, there's nothing I can do beyond the cleanup that we have and the painting and some exterior work to make that a pretty property. So it will continue to be the ugliest property in my portfolio, and yet the best cash flowing property I've ever had. And it really is the gift that keeps on giving. So that is my story about the best property that I have ever bought. But I hope you will join us next week for the Lady Landlords podcast. So please do make sure to hit that subscribe button. And I will see you all back next Tuesday for our next episode, and also back in the Lady Landlords Facebook community.
Thank you for listening to the Lady Landlords podcast. If you're feeling stuck in your real estate investing journey, visit lady-landlords.com to book a 15-minute orientation call with me and see if you're ready to join our mentorship program. Or you can subscribe to our newsletter and join our Facebook group for exclusive real estate investing tips and offers. Invest with confidence. Become a Lady Landlord today.